What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another pleasing Naruto story. What if Naruto get Karin pregnant? Chunin exam. If you enjoy this video then please like, share and do comment. And also check out our Patreon page for inclusive 18 plus Naruto story. So let's start the story.
The river no longer roared. It slid beneath the bridge in a dull, glassy sheet, as if the world itself had gone silent out of respect for what was about to break. Naruto Uzumaki stood at the edge of the span, boots soaked, orange jacket torn in places where chakra had burned the fabric black. Steam curled faintly from his skin, fading into the cold air. Across the water, on a stone ledge slick with moss, stood Sasuke Uchiha. They did not rush. They did not speak. They only stared, two forces held in check by something more fragile than power. Naruto's jaw tightened. His hands shook at his sides, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of what stood before him. This wasn't an enemy. It wasn't a target. It was the person who had once stood beside him under the same sky. If we move, someone won't walk away. The thought pressed into his skull like a blade. Sasuke's posture was calm, but wrong. Too still, too composed, as if emotion had been scraped out and replaced with something colder. The wind slid over the bridge, tugging at his cloak, whispering through the trees below. Leaves drifted between them, momentarily breaking their line of sight before falling into the river and vanishing. Naruto exhaled, voice raw. Whatever happens next, it doesn't end with both of us standing. The words weren't a challenge. They were a warning, a plea he refused to admit was one. For a heartbeat, Sasuke said nothing. Then his eyelids lowered. Not in surrender, in decision. When his eyes opened again, the familiar darkness was gone, replaced by the sharp, burning clarity of the Sharingan. The air itself seemed to tighten around him. "You're right," Sasuke said quietly. "This path doesn't allow for two survivors." From the water beneath his feet, movement rippled unnaturally. Pale shapes coiled upward, white, hollow figures emerging like echoes from the river's depths. Zetsu. Naruto's muscles coiled to strike. But before he could step forward, space twisted beside Sasuke. A spiral of distortion opened like a wound in reality itself. Tobi's presence bent the air, swallowing light. Sasuke did not look back. "Next time," he said, not to Naruto's face but to the space between them, "there won't be hesitation." Then he was gone. The portal snapped shut. The Zetsu forms dissolved back into the river, leaving only ripples behind. Silence crashed down harder than any jutsu. Naruto remained frozen, eyes locked on the place where Sasuke had stood. His breathing came uneven, the world around him distant, muffled, as though he were already underwater. Something warm slid down his cheek. Blood. The kunai had struck earlier, poisoned, its sting delayed by adrenaline and stubborn will. His vision darkened at the edges. He turned, and the bridge tilted. Sakura caught him before gravity could finish the job. Her hands were shaking as she pulled him into her, one arm around his back, the other already glowing with healing chakra. "Don't you dare fall now," she whispered, panic breaking through her usual steel. Kakashi stood a step behind them, one eye fixed on the river below, the other on the sky, already calculating escape routes, reinforcements, consequences. Sakura pressed her palm to Naruto's cheek. The poison burned beneath her chakra like something alive, resisting, clawing deeper. She forced her focus tighter, pushing harder. "I didn't realize it was coded," she said, voice tight with frustration and guilt. "I should have checked. Just stay with me, okay?" Naruto managed a breathless sound that might have been a laugh. "You're doing great." The darkness receded. The pain dulled. Something deeper inside him, the Nine-Tails' presence, stirred reluctantly, knitting what her chakra could not. Color returned to his face. Naruto straightened, stepping back before Sakura could notice how close he had come to losing consciousness. He wiped the remaining blood away with his sleeve, avoiding her eyes. "I'm fine," he said. "Really?" She didn't believe him, but she nodded anyway. Only then did Kakashi turn. At the far end of the bridge, slumped against the railing as if the structure itself were the only thing keeping her upright, was the red-haired girl. Her breathing was shallow. One lens of her glasses was cracked. Blood matted part of her wild hair, while the rest fell in straight strands over her shoulders. Her eyes, sharp crimson, were unfocused, fixed on the place where Sasuke had disappeared. Not fear, grief. A few steps echoed across the bridge as Team 7 approached. She tried to move, failed. Kakashi was already there, lifting her carefully, as though she might shatter if handled too roughly. She flinched at the contact, then went still. "He didn't even look back," she whispered. Not to them, to herself. Naruto clenched his fists. "Neither did I. Not when I should have." They retreated into the trees, leaping from branch to branch, the river fading beneath them. The girl's head rested against Kakashi's shoulder, her glasses slipping until the edge caught against his neck guard. He adjusted them without a word. Behind them, the bridge vanished into the canopy. But Naruto felt it, that fracture, not in the land, not in the mission, inside himself. Sasuke had chosen a future where bonds were obstacles, and Naruto had just watched him walk into it without striking the final blow. As the forest swallowed their path, Naruto stared into the darkness ahead, jaw set, heart burning with a promise he could no longer keep quiet. "If this is the road you've chosen," his eyes hardened, "then I'll follow it to the end." Somewhere far away, space twisted again, and Sasuke Uchiha stepped into a world where no one intended to let him turn back. Karin barely felt the motion of the trees anymore. Her body was being carried, but her mind was drifting, caught somewhere between exhaustion and the sharp sting of betrayal that still hadn't dulled. The forest blurred past in streaks of green and shadow as Kakashi leapt from branch to branch, his grip steady despite the weight on his back. What is happening?" Her voice came out thin, as if even the air were too heavy to push through her lungs. No one answered right away. The last thing she clearly remembered was Sasuke's back disappearing into warped space. No glance, no apology, just absence. After everything, the thought coiled tight in her chest. After everything I gave him. Her eyes lowered to the ground far below. Leaves drifted in slow spirals, the forest floor flashing in fragments between the branches. A bitter calm settled over her. A life stitched together from half-truths and borrowed loyalty. From following the wrong people, believing the wrong promises. From calling obsession something noble. She exhaled shakily. The team veered suddenly off the path. The shift in direction tugged at her senses, pulling her back into awareness. They descended into a small clearing hidden beneath towering trees. For figures lay sprawled across the grass. 3 human, 1 massive dog. Karin blinked, confusion cutting through the fog. Sakura was already moving. The kunoichi dropped to her knees, hands glowing as she worked quickly from one body to the next, medical chakra pressing life back into still muscles. The scent of antidotes and fresh blood hung faintly in the air. A moment later, breath returned. A bark shattered the quiet. "Akamaru!" Kiba surged upright, immediately scooping his partner into his arms. Relief flickered across his face, then ignited into fury as he turned on Sakura. His voice exploded through the clearing, words tumbling out too fast, too loud. Karin barely processed the argument. Her attention drifted to the others. The tall, pale shinobi with dark hair. Quiet, composed even as he sat up. His chakra was difficult to read. Not cold, not warm. It felt like something slowly realigning itself, inch by inch, toward something better. The boy with the red fang markings and the massive dog, loud, brash in movement, but his chakra told a different story. Steady, loyal, the kind that stayed when everything else ran. Then her gaze snagged on the one in green. Bowl cut, bright jumpsuit, completely ridiculous. And yet, Karin's senses sharpened instinctively. She couldn't map his chakra pathways cleanly. They were there undeniably, but arranged in a way that defied her expectations. Dense, controlled, powerful beyond what his appearance suggested. Interesting, she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. The team regrouped quickly. The wounded were stabilized. The urgency returned. They moved again. This time, Karin was more aware of the people around her. The blonde in orange was already arguing with the fang-marked boy, voices overlapping in sharp, chaotic bursts. She didn't catch most of it, only fragments, insults thrown like dull kunai. Naruto, you idiot! Her eyes lifted. Naruto? The name struck something deep in her memory. Sasuke had said it so often, usually with irritation, sometimes with something closer to pain. So this is him. Naruto snapped back with a retort that lacked any real bite. Sakura answered by smacking the back of his head without slowing her stride. Instead of anger, laughter followed. Raw, genuine, infectious. Even Kiba joined in. Even the quiet ones cracked faint smiles. Karin watched in stunned silence. This was a team, not soldiers bound by fear or ambition, but people who could strike each other and laugh in the same breath. Her senses shifted automatically, reaching, brushing against Naruto's chakra, and the world tilted. The exhaustion vanished. The ache in her body faded into something distant. What is this? His chakra was vast, wider than anything she had ever touched. But it wasn't suffocating. It didn't claw or crush. It welcomed. It was warm, peaceful, alive. Her breath hitched. I've never felt anything like this. Her grip tightened against Kakashi's shoulder without realizing it. She leaned her forehead lightly against his back, overwhelmed, not by pain, but by something dangerously close to hope. And then, something else surfaced. Pressure. Deep. Ancient. The warmth remained, but beneath it, far below the surface, something vast stirred. Her senses followed instinctively, and what she found made her stomach drop. The colors around Naruto's chakra darkened. Not corrupt, not violent, but immense. A shadow coiled within the light. Red bled into gold. Power folded in on itself, restrained by something stronger than chains. Karin lifted her head slowly. Her eyes widened as the image took shape, not physically, but in the space only chakra could occupy. Presence like a colossal fox. 9 tails. Watching. Waiting. Her breath left her in a whisper. So that's what you are. Naruto kept walking, laughing with his teammates, completely unaware of the storm bound inside him. And for the first time since Sasuke had vanished, Karin felt something other than loss. She felt fear, not of Naruto, but of what the world would do to someone who carried that kind of power, and still chose to smile. Behind them, deep in the forest, something ancient shifted in response. And far away, in the shadows where Sasuke walked his chosen path, fate began to turn. Karin had never known fear like this. Not in Orochimaru's laboratories. Not during battles where death hovered a breath away. Not even when facing the 8 tails beside Team Taka. This was different. What frightened her wasn't merely the scale of the power inside the blonde shinobi. It was where that power was taking her. She was walking toward the same village as him, toward the place that harbored something so vast, so restrained, that it felt less like chakra and more like a sealed catastrophe. She searched for logic, for any reason that could explain why such a force existed inside a boy who laughed so easily. But the moment stretched too tightly, her thoughts tangling in uncertainty. Only then did she realize she had been staring at the back of Naruto Uzumaki's head. Heat rushed to her cheeks. She looked away quickly, eyes fixing on the ground rushing beneath them. I shouldn't. Her throat tightened. Not after everything. Not again. The forest swallowed their footsteps. Not silent, never truly silent, but subdued, as though even the wind was holding its breath. Naruto walked ahead in his own world, the usual noise dulled by thoughts he refused to share. Kiba muttered something under his breath. The others moved without much conversation. For the first time since her capture, Karin was left alone with herself. I don't belong anywhere anymore. The truth pressed in on her chest. No allegiance, no purpose, no protection. They'll imprison me. The thought was immediate. Or worse, her fingers tightened weakly against Kakashi's flak jacket. She nudged her glasses back into place, needing something, anything, to anchor her. And again her eyes found Naruto. She studied him now without meaning to. Everything Sasuke ever said. Her lips parted slightly. It doesn't match what I see. Sasuke had described a nuisance, a reckless fool, a shadow that followed him. But this boy moved with a strange stillness now, gaze lifted toward the canopy as sunlight filtered through the leaves. Gold light brushed his whisker-marked cheeks, glinting off hair that looked almost unreal beneath the forest glow. Naruto slowed. He inhaled, then exhaled, as though releasing something heavy from inside his chest. Sakura, walking nearby, faltered for half a step, concern flashing across her face before she masked it. Karin noticed. She closed her eyes and mimicked his breath, trying to calm the storm inside herself. Kakashi shifted slightly beneath her. When she looked up, his visible eye curved into a gentle crescent, a quiet reassurance. She rested her chin lightly against his shoulder. He adjusted his hold and lengthened his stride, quickly closing the distance between himself and Naruto. When Kakashi drew even, Karin saw Naruto's face clearly for the first time. Not the caricature built from someone else's resentment. A boy, tired, determined, carrying something far heavier than his frame suggested. He glanced sideways and smiled. Not wide, not forced, just warm. Karin's breath caught. Her face burned as if she had stepped too close to a flame. Along with the heat came something else. A wash of calm so deep it nearly made her dizzy. The ache in her body dulled. The fear in her chest loosened its grip. For a moment, there was only that peaceful current flowing from him. Then it shattered. Power surged, not outward, upward. From a depth so profound it felt bottomless. The world seemed to tilt. Karin's senses were ripped from the surface and dragged downward through layers of chakra that burned gold. Then red. Then something darker than either. Her vision flooded with shadow. And from that shadow, eyes opened, huge, crimson, filled with ancient wrath. They stared directly into her own. Her skin prickled as if frost had replaced her blood. Her chakra recoiled violently, buckling under a pressure that did not attack, but acknowledged her. As though something immense had noticed her presence and was deciding whether she was worth more than a passing glance. Breath locked in her lungs. And then, reflected in the depths of those monstrous eyes, she saw something else. A figure, slender, light-skinned, hair like burning red silk, eyes violet, impossibly beautiful, staring back at her with a sorrow that pierced deeper than fear. The image hovered within the beast's gaze like a memory that refused to fade. Karin gasped. Her grip tightened involuntarily against Kakashi's shoulders as the vision tore through her senses. Naruto was still walking, still smiling faintly, completely unaware of the storm roaring inside him. But Karin understood now. That power wasn't merely sealed. It was watching, and something inside it had just seen her. Her voice trembled into the space no one else could hear. What are you really carrying? Far beneath the forest canopy, something ancient stirred, and in the depths of Naruto Uzumaki's soul, the nine-tailed fox shifted, its gaze fixed not on the world ahead, but on Karin. The woman inside the darkness tilted her head, not with malice, with curiosity. A faint, knowing smirk curved her lips as she regarded Karin as if she were something newly discovered. The violet of her eyes shimmered against the endless red behind them. Karin could not breathe. Her heart hammered violently against her ribs, each beat louder than the last. Whatever secrets lived inside the blonde boy were not meant for ordinary minds to touch. She had sensed monsters before, raw, destructive chakra, but this was different. This was layered. A presence wrapped inside another presence. And the darker one was watching her. The crimson eyes narrowed. Power surged. Not outward. Through her. Karin felt the force slam into her senses like a tidal wave. Her chakra recoiled violently, her vision tearing apart as if reality itself had rejected her intrusion. She screamed, and the world snapped back. She was on the ground. Hands reached for her. Voices blurred together. Sakura was kneeling beside her, eyes wide with concern. Kiba hovered nearby, Akamaru growling low at something only he could sense. Lee had already dropped into a defensive stance. Kakashi stood just behind them, calm, but alert. They were worried. For her. Even though she had been their enemy. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Then Naruto stepped forward. The moment he entered her vision, her blood turned to ice. For a fraction of a second, less than a heartbeat, she saw it again. Crimson eyes. Not his. Looking out through his cerulean ones. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. Karin scrambled backward, palms scraping against dirt, fear overwhelming every rational thought she had left. Naruto froze. His hand had been reaching toward her. The motion stalled in midair. Something painful flickered across his face. Brief, quiet, but unmistakable. He lowered his hand slowly. Karin saw it. The hurt, the confusion. Her chest tightened. "I!" Her voice cracked as guilt punched through the fear. Without thinking, she grabbed his wrist. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean." Naruto blinked, surprised. Then he smiled. Not the bright grin that hid pain. Something softer. "It's okay," he said simply. He slipped an arm around her and lifted her as though she weighed nothing, settling her onto his back instead of Kakashi's. The moment her arms locked around his shoulders, Karin felt it again. The darkness, not attacking, just there, like a vast ocean beneath a thin layer of sunlight. Her sensing ability screamed from every direction. Waves of chakra poured off him, warm on the surface, suffocating below. She clutched him harder than she ever had Kakashi. Naruto choked slightly. Karin, a little." She loosened instantly. Sorry." Kiba's voice cut in with a sharp laugh. "Oi, Naruto. I think the redhead's into you." Lee's eyes lit up. "How wonderfully youthful, Naruto-kun." Karin's face ignited. "I do not like him," she shouted, voice echoing through the forest. "I'm just making sure I don't fall again, you idiots. You baka." Kakashi's visible eye curved in amusement. Easy there. We're all headed to the same place for now. Naruto shifted her slightly to make sure she was secure. Don't worry, he said, voice steady. We'll get you there. After that, everyone chooses what they do next. His words were simple, but something in the way he said them made Karin's throat tighten. You're nothing like what Sasuke said. The forest eventually thinned. The gates of Konoha rose before them. At the village, Naruto peeled away from the group as soon as the debriefing ended, hunger finally dragging him back into something that almost felt normal. Ichiraku. The familiar scent of broth and noodles drifted through the streets like a promise. His stomach growled loudly. Reconstruction stretched in every direction. Timber scaffolding, freshly laid stone, and Yamato's wooden structures wove through the village like proof that Konoha refused to stay broken. People noticed him, first in ones, then in dozens. Whispers followed, then voices. Uzumaki Naruto, you saved us. Thank you. Some waved, others bowed. A few even smiled at him like he was something precious. One woman called out, I hope you become Hokage someday. Naruto faltered, just slightly. The words hit harder than any jutsu. For years, those same streets had been filled with glares, muttered curses, cold shoulders. He remembered being shoved aside, ignored, blamed for things he never understood. Remembered hunger that wasn't just physical. Now this, he didn't know what to do with it. He hunched his shoulders unconsciously, eyes dropping to the dirt path beneath his sandals. Heat crept into his cheeks. Are they really serious? He didn't look back, didn't raise his hand, just kept walking, because if he stopped, if he let himself believe it too fully, he wasn't sure what would break first. Above him, in the deepest place no one could see, the nine-tailed fox watched the village with ancient eyes. And somewhere beyond the red of its gaze, another presence lingered. Waiting, Naruto didn't look back. The moment the crowd thickened, the moment the voices grew warmer than he knew how to accept, he pivoted sharply down a side street. Years of slipping away from watchful eyes had etched an invisible map into his mind. Alleys, shortcuts, forgotten corridors between buildings. Paths built not for convenience, but for escape. Ichiraku was only a few turns away. He lifted his head as the wind brushed his face, and his breath caught at the familiar sight. A single paper lantern swaying above the entrance, its light dancing across the stone. But the stand was gone. In its place stood something bigger, stronger. A full restaurant, solid walls and wide counters, doors sliding smoothly on polished rails. The colors, orange and black, were unmistakable. For him, Naruto's lips twitched upward. He didn't hesitate. The door slid open, and he practically launched himself onto a stool, hands slamming down against the counter, hunger burning through every thought. 5 bowls, he shouted, grin wild. Miso, and don't stop. Tucci looked up from behind the counter, eyes crinkling. You always come in like a storm, Naruto. Ayam was already moving, voice calling orders into the back as steam rose from the kitchen. The scent hit him full force. Rich broth, spice, comfort. For a moment, the world shrank to a single perfect promise. Then the door slid open again. 2 Chunin stepped inside. They froze when they saw him. Then their faces broke into grins. Hey! One called out. It's him. The one who fought pain. They crossed the room quickly, relief and excitement written plainly across their faces. One pulled out a small notebook, the other already fishing for a pen. Please, the older one said, nearly tripping over his words. My son. He keeps talking about you. Could you sign this? And my daughter, the other added eagerly. She'd lose her mind. Naruto's face went crimson. His ears burned. He laughed weakly, eyes darting for an exit that didn't exist. He wasn't ready for this, wasn't ready to be something people asked from instead of avoided. His senses stretched automatically, searching for distraction. The renovated shop buzzed quietly. Cooks moving in rhythm, servers weaving between tables, Tsuchi calling out orders. A small bell rang as a takeout request was completed. Crispy pork cutlets packed neatly for delivery. Delivery to T&I, Tsuchi called. A uniformed runner stepped forward. Naruto's eyes lit up. Before anyone could question it, a puff of displaced air snapped through the room. In the space where the deliverman had been, Naruto stood, food in hand. "Borrowing this," he said, already backing toward the door. "I'll bring it back." And then he was gone. The streets blurred beneath his feet as he ran, heart pounding. Not from exertion, but from the adrenaline of escape. When he finally slowed, the village had thinned into quieter lanes, shadows stretching between buildings. He stopped beside a stone wall and slid down to sit, the warm package resting at his side. Silence. He tipped his head back, staring up at the deepening blue sky. For once, nothing hurt. No voices, no expectations. Just the hum of the village and the faint echo of steam rising from the food beside him. Then he looked down. The container wasn't his. His brow furrowed. He opened the casing and scanned the label. Konoha T&I Department. His heart skipped. He snapped it shut and surged to his feet. Torture and interrogation. Great going, Naruto. He checked the sky. The sun was still high. Plenty of time before evening. A small, strange resolve settled in his chest. I can do this. Just once. So he walked. Not rushed. Not hiding. The closer he drew to the T&I district, the quieter the streets became. Civilian foot traffic vanished. The air itself seemed heavier, more controlled. Naruto didn't miss the way the atmosphere changed. He also didn't miss the faint ripple beneath his skin. Deep inside something stirred. Not hunger. Not anger. Awareness. He didn't let it show. When the gray building finally rose before him, windows narrow, walls thick, Naruto adjusted his grip on the package and stepped forward. Inside, behind sealed doors and shadowed corridors, someone was waiting. Someone who had already begun to unravel the truth about the girl he had carried through the forest. And something far older than any of them was watching through his eyes. The door creaked open. Naruto crossed the threshold, unaware that this simple delivery would change everything. Naruto cut right and descended a long slope where new grass had already begun to reclaim the scarred earth. Thin saplings pierced through what had once been flattened ground, stubborn and green. He couldn't help the small, crooked smile that touched his lips. Konoha doesn't stay broken. Another turn brought him to a narrow street most villagers avoided. The buildings grew lower, more utilitarian. At the far end stood a structure marked with a simple insignia, the unmistakable crest of the Torture and Interrogation Division. Naruto hesitated for only a breath before pushing the door open. Inside, the air felt colder. The corridors were quiet. No jeers. No whispered rumors. No admirers asking for autographs. Just the muted hum of a place built for secrets. He followed the signs until he reached the only room that showed signs of life. A knock. Enter. The door slid aside. Karin sat at the center table, examining her nails with forced boredom. Two interrogators were arguing in low, irritated voices on one side of the room, while Ibiki Marino sat opposite her, thick fingers pressing against his temples as if warding off a headache. Naruto bit back a laugh. For someone who once terrified entire classrooms, Ibiki now looked more exhausted than intimidating. The moment Naruto stepped inside, Ibiki rose. His shadow loomed large even without menace. He took the takeout container from Naruto and placed it carefully in front of Karin. "You asked for food," he said flatly. "Eat." Karin blinked. "Huh. So you actually brought it." Naruto frowned. "Wait. You ordered this? Why would?" "She drives a hard bargain," Ibiki muttered. "Information for meals. Unfortunately, my team is getting nowhere." His single visible eye slid toward Naruto. "Sit in. Maybe she'll talk to someone who isn't paid to scare her." Naruto hesitated, then dragged a chair beside Ibiki and dropped into it with a sigh. "So much for ramen." Ibiki folded his arms. "Start talking. Akatsuki. Their movements. Their objective. You have no reason to protect them." Karin opened the container and inhaled deeply, visibly savoring the aroma. "Wow, you leaf people really know how to cook," she said, picking up a piece. "I might defect permanently if this is standard." Naruto leaned forward and grabbed her shoulders. "Hey, you can't just." The room vanished. Somewhere else. Smoke rushed past Naruto's face. The ground lurched beneath him. Then stillness. When his vision cleared, they were no longer in Tsunade. They stood inside a broad stone chamber lit by soft, natural light. A long table stretched between them and two small, elderly figures seated calmly on the far side. Two toads. One with deep lines carved into his face. The other with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Naruto's mouth fell open. "Fukasaku-sama. Shima Bachan." He released Karin and nearly vaulted across the room, wrapping both toad sages in a fierce hug. "I didn't mean to. Wait. Why am I here?" Karin stared in horror. "Actual toads." Her eyes bulged. She looked down at the table, then at the crawling insects scattered along the stone floor. Her face went pale. She clamped a hand over her mouth, fighting back a very real gag. Fukasaku peered at her. "Eh? Naruto-chan, we didn't call anyone else." Shima tilted her head, studying Karin closely. They were touching when the summoning activated. Chakra doesn't care about intentions. Karin swallowed hard. "Why you're real." Naruto finally noticed her expression. Yeah. They're the toad sages." Fukasaku leaned forward, voice calm but piercing. "And you are young lady?" Karin," she said weakly. No last name that I know of." The room grew quiet, not tense, but heavy. Shima's gaze sharpened as she studied Karin more closely, past the trembling hands, past the lingering fear. "Your chakra," she murmured. "It's unusual." Karin stiffened. Naruto turned toward her. "Hey, are you okay?" She looked at him, and for just a flicker of time, something dark rippled beneath his presence again. A shadow behind the warmth. Her breath hitched. Her voice faltered. "I think I know why I was brought here." Fukasaku straightened. "Then speak." Karin swallowed, every instinct screaming that what she was about to say would change more than just her fate. "There's something inside you, Naruto Uzumaki," she said quietly. "Something that's been watching me since the forest." Naruto froze. Shima's eyes narrowed. "And what?" Fukasaku asked. "Did it show you?" Karin closed her eyes. "Eyes," she whispered. "Red, ancient, and behind them another presence. One that isn't just a beast." Silence crashed down. Deep within Naruto's soul, something stirred. Not angry, not violent, aware. The stone beneath their feet seemed to hum faintly, as though the very world had begun listening. Fukasaku exhaled slowly. "So it's begun." Naruto stared between them, heart pounding. Begun what? No one answered him, because whatever had been sealed inside him for so long had just been seen, and it was no longer content to remain a secret. Shima's gaze did not soften. "Then explain something to us," she said calmly. "How were the two of you connected before you arrived here?" Karin stiffened. The pressure in the room was unlike anything she had felt outside of high-level shinobi. The chakra of the two elder toads wasn't aggressive, but it was vast, ancient, and absolute. It pressed against her senses like gravity. I mean, her voice wavered. Naruto stepped forward. "I was questioning her," he said simply. "She used to work with Sasuke. If anyone knows what Akatsuki is doing, or what they want from him, it's her." Fukasaku's eyes narrowed. "So she is your enemy?" Karin felt it then. A spike of chakra. Not violent, but sharp enough to make her breath hitch. Before she could answer, Naruto raised his hand. "No," he said. The word was quiet. Final. He turned fully toward Karin. For a second, she forgot the stone chamber, the toads, the fear. All she saw was his expression. Serious, unwavering, something deeper than obligation. "There's no need to hurt her," Naruto said. "No need to lock her away or dispose of her. She's here because of me." He lifted his gaze back to the toad sages. "She's under my protection." The air seemed to tighten. Karin stared at him. She barely knew him, barely understood him. Yet he stood between her and two beings whose power dwarfed most of the shinobi world. Not because he had to, because he chose to. Shima studied him carefully. "You're certain, Naruto-chan?" He didn't hesitate. "I am." A faint smile touched his lips, soft, almost fond. "And besides, I don't think my mother would like it if I let someone like her get hurt." Karin's heart skipped. "Mother?" Fukasaku exhaled slowly. "Very well. If you take responsibility, then so be it. But know this, when you place someone beneath your protection, you bind their fate to your own." Naruto nodded. "I understand." Karin didn't. Not fully. But something inside her shifted all the same. Outside, they walked beneath towering stone formations and winding paths, the world of the toads stretching endlessly around them. The group moved steadily toward their destination, but Karin's thoughts were anything but quiet. She talked, and talked, and talked. "I gave him everything," she snapped suddenly, hands clenched at her sides. "I followed him, helped him, covered for him. What did it get me? He didn't even hesitate when he tried to kill me." Naruto walked beside her, eyes forward, absorbing very little of it. "And I still don't understand myself," Karin continued, voice cracking just enough to betray what she tried to hide. "Why do I still feel this way about him? Why does it still hurt? Did he ever care at all? Or was I just convenient?" She stopped walking, looked down. "Maybe I just wasn't enough," she whispered. "Not smart enough, not strong enough, not worth staying for. Maybe it's just because of this stupid red hair." Naruto's steps slowed. Something in her words struck deeper than he expected. "That sounds uncomfortably familiar." A strange heat crept into his face as a memory surfaced. Stories of his mother, of her stubbornness, her temper, her loneliness before she was ever truly seen. "She's like her." Before he could stop himself. "Well, I think it's because of your red hair that you're beautiful." The words escaped him, raw, unfiltered. His mind went blank. "I did not just say that." Karin froze. Slowly, she turned toward him. "And Naruto?" A faint blush bloomed across her cheeks. What did you just say?" He nearly tripped over his own feet. "And nothing. I mean, just forget it. Let's keep moving." He sped up, shoving his hands into his pockets, refusing to meet her eyes. Behind him, Karin stood rooted in place, heart hammering. He didn't mean it, she muttered weakly. He couldn't have. But her voice lacked conviction. And somewhere deep inside Naruto Uzumaki, beneath the warmth, beneath the compassion, beneath the quiet resolve, something ancient stirred, not in anger, not in hunger, but in recognition. Far ahead, at the heart of the Toad realm, the great Toad sage waited. And when Naruto crossed into his presence, the truth about what lived inside him, and why Karin had been shown what she saw, would no longer remain hidden. Karin didn't slow. She surged forward, matching Naruto's pace as they followed the elder toads toward the heart of Mount Myoboku. Stone pathways curved upward into a colossal structure, its walls layered with age, carved by centuries of summoning and prophecy. They entered together. Dozens of eyes followed their movement. Ancient toads lined the hall, some perched along pillars, others embedded into the architecture itself as though the mountain had grown around them. The air vibrated faintly with chakra, so thick it felt almost visible. At the far end, massive doors opened. Beyond them sat the great Toad Sage. His form filled the chamber, ancient, immense, crowned by a ceremonial hat that shadowed eyes said to have witnessed the turning of eras. Karin's breath caught. The weight of the place pressed into her bones. Her voice faltered. See, can I go back? Naruto glanced at her. If you'd rather be locked in a cell with people who don't trust you, he said calmly, that's your choice. Or, you can stay with me. She stiffened. With you? She echoed. He met her eyes, unwavering. I mean, under my protection. If you're with me, the village won't touch you. Not while I'm responsible for you. Her chakra brushed against his, searching. She found no deceit, only resolve. Why? Karin asked quietly. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Naruto's expression softened. Does that really matter? He asked. We can get to know each other. What you were, what you did. That doesn't define what you become. Something in her chest twisted. She took a hesitant step closer to him. Then what are you? She asked. And where did you bring me? Naruto turned slightly, gesturing to the chamber. This is the home of the toads, the summons I train with. I've learned to use senjutsu here. I'm a toad sage. His gaze lifted toward the towering figure at the far end. And that is the great Toad Sage. Karin stared. The world around her felt unreal, alive with chakra in every stone, every shadow, every breath. Everything here has power. The great Toad Sage shifted. Ah, he murmured slowly. And who might you be? Naruto and Karin both froze. They exchanged a look. Then, in perfect unison, you don't remember us? The ancient toad's mouth twitched. Not in confusion, in amusement. Memory is a river, he said, and I do not always stand in the same place within it. Silence stretched. Then his presence changed. The air thickened. Even the surrounding toads stilled. I have seen another turning of fate, the great Toad Sage said. Another future branching from the one before. Karin's pulse quickened. Naruto straightened instinctively. A war will come, the sage continued. Not of nations alone, but of bloodlines. A struggle that will not be decided by armies, but by choice. His eyes focused, sharp despite his age. Two paths stand before the world. Two legacies bound to suffering. One must rise, and one must fall. The chamber seemed to darken. The blood of the eyes, and the blood of the hair, the sage intoned. One lineage will be restored. The other will be erased from history. Karin's breath hitched. Naruto felt something deep within him stir. Not rage, not fear, recognition. Which one survives, the sage said, will depend on the bonds you choose and the person you decide to protect. His gaze shifted, settling first on Naruto, then on Karin. The mountain itself seemed to hold its breath. Naruto's fists clenched. What are you saying? He demanded. The great toad sage closed his eyes. I am saying, he whispered, that one of you carries the future of a clan long drowned in blood, and the other carries the power that will determine whether that bloodline is reborn or wiped from the world. Karin's legs felt weak. Naruto stepped in front of her without thinking. The sage opened his eyes once more. And the choice has already begun. Deep within Naruto's soul, something ancient shifted again. Watching, waiting, for the moment when protection would become defiance, and defiance would become war. Naruto did not look away from the great toad sage. How do I do this? He asked quietly. How do I even begin to take hold of something like that? The chamber remained still for a breath. Then another voice answered. The fox, one of the elder toads, said from the shadows. You must master the nine tails. Only by facing what is sealed within you can you open the first gate of your true power. Naruto's jaw tightened. But that is not all, the toad continued. There is a second key. The toad's body shifted unnaturally, stretching and unfolding like living parchment. Karin flinched despite herself as its form unraveled into a long, ancient scroll. Symbols etched across its surface pulsed faintly with chakra, complex, layered, alive. Her eyes followed the markings until they stopped on the far right. An Uzumaki spiral, and above it, a square space, empty and waiting. The toad inclined its head toward Naruto. Naruto didn't hesitate. He stepped forward. Wait, Karin said suddenly. The nine tails, wasn't it destroyed by the fourth Hokage? Naruto paused only long enough to meet her gaze. No, he said. He didn't destroy it. He sealed it. Inside me. I am the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox. His eyes flicked back to the scroll. And this is the seal he left behind so that I could one day command it. Fukasaku's voice cut in sharply. Naruto-chan, revealing something like that so easily. I know, Naruto replied, but I trust her. He raised his hand. Let's begin. Chakra ignited along his fingertips, controlled, precise. He pressed his palm into the empty square. Light surged outward, carving itself into the scroll in living lines. Seals unfolded from the point of contact and spread like ink through water, sliding from parchment to skin. Naruto gasped as the chakra poured into him. Not violently, purposefully. Karin's breath caught. She felt it immediately, the flood of energy moving through him, threading itself into his coils. It wasn't foreign. It wasn't corrupt. It was familiar. Too familiar. Her senses followed the current instinctively. The chakra carried warmth, resolve, a burning will that felt achingly close to something she had already touched. I felt this before. Her heart began to race as recognition crept through her. The color of it, the texture, the fire beneath the calm. This isn't just Naruto's chakra. Her eyes widened. The chakra wasn't identical, but it resonated with his in a way that could only mean one thing. Your father, she whispered. The fourth Hokage. Wasn't he? For a moment the flow stuttered. Not in resistance, in acknowledgement. Fukasaku and Shima both narrowed their eyes, their attention snapping fully to Karin as they examined her through senjutsu, measuring what she was, what she could perceive. Naruto's lips curved faintly. Once the surge ended and the seals settled into their new form, he turned toward her. There was no shock on his face, only something quiet, proud. Yeah, he said. Karin stared at him, something heavy pressing behind her ribs. So much power, so much loss, so much blood, and yet he still smiled. "Tell me everything you know," Naruto said gently. "About Akatsuki, about Sasuke, about what they're planning." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "And I'll tell you what you want to know." Karin swallowed. She glanced at Fukasaku and Shima, then back to Naruto. "Where do I start?" Naruto's gaze hardened, not in anger, but in resolve. From the beginning, behind him, deep within the seal, something ancient shifted. Not resisting, not raging, waiting for the moment when the first key would be turned, and the second would demand a price. Naruto waited. Karin adjusted her glasses, fingers trembling faintly at the frame. She avoided his eyes at first, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Without a word, the elder toads guided them out of the great chamber and onto one of the massive leaves that formed natural platforms across the twilight-washed realm of Mount Myoboku. The world here felt distant from everything else. Quiet, suspended between time and memory. Karin stopped near the edge of the leaf, staring out at the layered horizon. For someone who rarely looked back, who survived by moving forward, the silence pressed heavily on her. But maybe, she thought, maybe this boy would listen. Team Taka, Hibi, whatever name Sasuke had given them, none of them had ever cared about what happened to her. The bridge, the betrayal, the pain. Her chest tightened as the memory cut through her. And then it exploded out of her. "That bastard!" Karin shouted suddenly, fists clenched. "He stabbed me." Naruto startled so hard he nearly tripped, instinctively ducking behind the two toads. The force of her anger, raw, unfiltered, washed over him like a storm. Her chakra spiked violently, not aimed at anyone, but burning with hurt too deep to contain. She paced, words tumbling out, fury colliding with grief as she tore into everything Sasuke had done, everything he had become. Naruto watched in stunned silence, not afraid of her, afraid for her. When the outburst finally burned itself down, she stopped. Her shoulders sagged as if the anger had been holding her upright. Naruto stepped forward again, slowly, carefully. Karin felt something change behind her, the pressure easing, replaced by a steady, calming presence. She turned her head just enough to see him walking at her side. Not judging, not demanding, just there. She followed as he led her toward a stone bench set at the edge of the leaf. He sat first, then gestured for her to join him. They sat in silence. The vast world of the toads stretched before them, layers of stone and leaf and glowing sky folding into one another like a living dream. "It's beautiful," Karin said quietly. Naruto blinked, surprised by the softness in her voice. He almost smiled. "It reminds me of where I came from," she continued. "My home." She drew in a slow breath, letting the calm of the place seep into her bones. "The land of grass," Karin said. "That's what I've always called it." Naruto tilted his head. "Land of grass?" "Jiraiya-sensei and I traveled everywhere for 3 years. I never heard of a place like that." "That's because we never really had a proper name," she replied. "Just fields, endless green. The earth was rich, perfect for farming. The wind was always cool. If you laid down in the grass, it felt like the world itself was telling you to rest." Her eyes softened. "And the people?" A small smile appeared, fragile and genuine. "They were kind, honest, not because they had to be, because that was just who they were." She fell quiet again. Naruto listened, not interrupting, not trying to fix anything, just letting her speak. Inside him, beneath the warmth and the steady breathing, something ancient stirred once more. Not in anger, not in hunger, but in awareness. As if the past she was about to reveal was already brushing against the future he had been warned about. Karin's fingers tightened against the edge of the bench. "That world is gone," she said. And this time, when she looked at Naruto, it wasn't with anger. It was with the weight of everything she was finally ready to tell him. Naruto listened without interrupting. When Karin finished, the wind across Mount Myoboku seemed louder than before. "That's complicated," he said at last. "I never knew he crossed paths with anyone like that during the exams." His eyes softened slightly. "What happened to you after that?" Karin gave a humorless laugh. "Orochimaru found me. Or maybe I found him. Either way, I became useful to him. His experiments, his research, I was good at it." She shrugged, though the motion was stiff. 16 years old and already buried in things no one should see. Naruto grimaced. "You don't have to explain. I really don't want to know what Orochimaru considers education." A brief, broken smile flickered across her face, but it didn't last. She looked back toward the glowing horizon, eyes distant. "After that first meeting, Sasuke never left my mind," Karin said quietly. "Not because he was kind. He wasn't. Not because he stayed. He didn't. But because, for one moment, someone strong chose to step in." Naruto swallowed. She continued, voice steadier now, as though speaking it aloud finally gave the memories shape. "I thought that meant something. That if I became stronger, smarter, more useful, then maybe I'd matter to him. Maybe I wouldn't be someone who was left behind again." Her hands curled into fists against the bench. "So I followed him. I stood beside him. I gave everything I had." A pause. "And when he didn't need me anymore, he didn't hesitate." Naruto's jaw tightened. She didn't have to say what that meant. "I kept telling myself it was fine," Karin whispered. "That I deserved it. That I was only valuable as long as I was useful." She finally turned toward him. "But when he tried to kill me," her voice wavered. "Something broke." Naruto looked at her, really looked. Not as an enemy, not as a liability, as someone who had been shaped by abandonment the same way he had. "You didn't deserve that," he said quietly. Karin's breath hitched. For a second, she looked like she might argue. Then the fight left her. "I know," she said. "I just didn't know it back then." They sat in silence again. The Toad realm glowed softly around them, the great leaves whispering in the wind like the pages of an ancient book. Inside Naruto, something stirred. Not the violent, burning presence of the Nine Tails. Something deeper, something older. A quiet recognition of shared pain. "You don't have to be useful to be worth protecting," Naruto said. Karin stared at him. "You really believe that?" He nodded. "Yeah, I do." Her throat tightened. "Then maybe," she whispered, "this is the first place I've ever been where that's true." Naruto looked out across the horizon. Far away, beyond the reach of this peaceful world, Akatsuki moved. Sasuke walked a path drenched in blood. And within Naruto, the power he had only just begun to touch responded faintly, like a door creaking open. Not for destruction, for a choice. Behind them, in the shadows of Mount Myoboku, the great Toad Sage watched. The first key had been turned. The second was already waiting. Karin went silent so suddenly that Naruto thought he had said something wrong. He glanced around, awkward heat creeping into his face. For a moment, he didn't know what to do, didn't know how to fix whatever he had just broken. Then her shoulders began to shake. He turned back just in time to see her throw her head back and burst into laughter. Not light, not joyful, the kind that comes from a place too close to pain. Naruto stiffened. eyes wide, instinct telling him something was wrong even as she laughed harder. Tears streamed down her face, blurring her glasses. The sound fractured, laughter collapsing into sobs. Before she could pull away, Naruto caught her and drew her into his chest. He didn't know what words to use, so he didn't use any. He just held her. Her body trembled violently as she cried into his shirt, breath hitching, fingers clutching fabric like it was the only thing anchoring her to the world. Under any other circumstance, Naruto might have panicked, might have fled from something he didn't understand. But he understood this. Not the details, the feeling, the breaking point. She had been surrounded by cruelty, exploitation, and blood for too long. By people who only saw value in what she could give, her mind, her body, her abilities. Even when she had tried to be useful, tried to be strong, it had only led her deeper into places no one should be forced to live in. And the final blow, Sasuke's attack, not just betrayal, rejection. She pulled back just enough for him to see her face. "I tried so hard," Karin whispered, tears streaking down her cheeks. "I tried to be good at something, anything, but everything I was good at, it was either wrong, or it was only because of what I could give them." Naruto's chest tightened. He gently lifted her chin so she would meet his eyes. "What do you mean?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Sasuke?" she began, and stopped herself, turning away as fresh tears welled. Naruto's jaw clenched. His hand tightened against the bench. "That bastard," he muttered. "No," Karin said quickly, panic in her voice. "I wanted it. I thought I did. I was just stupid. I didn't understand what was being taken from me. I thought it was the same as being chosen." Naruto shook his head slowly. "That doesn't make it okay." He looked at her fully now. "Not ever." She stared at him, eyes red, breathing unsteady. "Then what happens to me now?" she asked quietly. Naruto didn't hesitate. "You stay with me." Her brows knit in confusion. "What?" "I don't want anything bad to happen to you," he said simply. "You've been through enough. And whether you like it or not, you're under my protection." She studied his face, searching for doubt. There was none. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do that for someone like me?" He gave a small, crooked smile. "Because I know what it's like to be treated like you only exist for what you carry." She rested a trembling hand against his shoulder. "What do you mean?" Her voice softened. "Your father was the fourth Hokage. You were supposed to be protected, loved." Naruto's expression dimmed, not with bitterness, but with a quiet acceptance that had been forged over years. "I was the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails," he said. "For most of my life, people didn't see a kid. They saw a monster. I was ignored, feared, insulted, sometimes worse. I didn't even know who my parents were. Only the third Hokage did." Karin's eyes widened. "Why didn't he tell you?" Anger flashed across her face. Naruto shook his head. "He was trying to protect me. My dad had enemies everywhere. If people knew who I was, I wouldn't have survived long enough to grow up." She looked away, struggling with the answer. "But still," she said quietly, "he could have put you somewhere. An orphanage, family, something." Naruto leaned back against the bench, eyes lifting to the endless sky of Mount Myoboku. "Maybe," he said, "but what he did give me was the chance to choose who I became." He turned back to her. "And that's what I'm offering you too." Karin's breath caught. "You don't have to be useful," Naruto said. "You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to belong to someone who hurts you just to feel like you exist." For a long moment, she couldn't speak. Then, in a voice barely louder than the wind across the great leaves, she whispered, No one's ever said that to me before. Naruto didn't answer. He didn't need to, because somewhere deep within him, beneath the seal, beneath the ancient power watching in silence, something far more human held fast. The promise that no one standing at his side would ever be discarded again. And in the distance, beyond even the reach of the Toad realm, fate began to tighten its grip. Naruto didn't look away as he spoke. "They tried," he said quietly. "Didn't work. I was kicked out of the orphanage. No one wanted to take in the demon kid either. So I grew up alone, in a falling apart apartment that smelled like dust and old wood. I cleaned it constantly, because if the place looked broken, it felt like I was too." Karin listened, stunned. The loneliness, the not belonging anywhere, that shaped me, Naruto continued. It hurt, a lot, but it also made me who I am. I wouldn't erase it. She stared at him. You wouldn't trade that for a real family? He shook his head. I wouldn't, he said simply. If my life had been different, you and I wouldn't be sitting here. You'd probably be locked in a cell or worse. And honestly, I don't think I'd have the same will I do now if everything had been easy. Karin swallowed. I think I understand you better now, she said softly. Then, forcing a lighter tone. So, how long are we stuck here with the toads? Naruto opened his mouth to answer. Enough. Shima's voice echoed through the stone paths. Both of you, the elder toad said calmly. You may return. We have what we need. The world twisted. Konoha, T&I facility. Smoke vanished in a blink. They were back inside the interrogation chamber. Ibiki was still there, fingers pressed to his temples. The two interrogators were arguing again in low, irritated voices. The room felt smaller than it had before, colder, heavier. Karin found herself smiling faintly, not because of where she was, but because of who she was with. Ibiki turned to her, expression stern. His hand moved to his belt. Metal glinted. Naruto moved instantly. Chakra flared. Sage mode surged across his features as 3 shadow clones snapped into existence. In a breath, one had Ibiki's arm pinned. The cuffs held harmlessly away. The other 2 clones restrained the remaining interrogators. Naruto's gaze was steady, not threatening. Final. The door slid open. Tsunade stepped inside. The room froze. Ibiki, she said evenly. There's no need for restraints. His eyes widened slightly. Hokage-sama? Naruto has taken responsibility for her. Tsunade's gaze flicked to Karin. She remains under his supervision. Ibiki hesitated, then nodded. As you command. Tsunade turned toward the red-haired girl. You'll be staying with him for now. Karin bowed deeply, emotion tightening her throat. Thank you, Hokage-sama. She followed Naruto out without looking back. The streets of Konoha. I followed them, some curious, some suspicious. Naruto noticed but didn't care. Karin did. She walked closer to him without realizing it, matching his pace as murmurs drifted through the air. I'm guessing this will get you in trouble, she said quietly. He grinned. Probably. She rolled her eyes, then smiled. Maybe. This won't be so bad. They stopped before a tall building that hadn't existed before the war. This is it, Naruto said. Karin blinked. You live here. It wasn't an apartment. It was a home. The construction corps had outdone themselves. Wide windows, smooth stone walls, polished floors. Everything inside was new, clean, carefully built. Karin stepped inside slowly, almost afraid to touch anything. Tile instead of warped wood. Soft rugs beneath her feet. Modern counters, gleaming appliances. a shower that looked more like something from a noble estate than a shinobi's home. "This is where you live?" she whispered. "Temporary," Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head. "They said it was a thank you for everything." She looked around again, then at him. "You don't look like someone who thinks they deserve this." He shrugged. "I'm still getting used to it." They stood there in silence, the unfamiliar comfort pressing in around them. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Karin wasn't in a lab. Not in a hideout. Not in a cell. Just in a place. A place that wasn't built to cage her. Naruto turned toward her. "You can take the bedroom. I'll use the couch." She shook her head. "We'll figure it out." A faint, almost shy smile crossed her face. "Thank you for not letting them put chains on me." He met her eyes. "I told you, you're under my protection." Something in her chest eased. But deep beneath that calm, far beyond the walls of the apartment, power stirred. Not Naruto's, not Karin's. In the shadows of the world, Akatsuki was already moving again. And somewhere along Sasuke's path, blood and destiny were drawing closer to collision. Inside Naruto's seal, the Nine Tails opened a single watchful eye, because this choice, this one act of protection, had just placed Karin at the center of a future that would decide which bloodline would rise, and which would be erased forever. Karin took in the apartment one more time. It was real. Clean floors, warm light, no bars on the windows, no guards outside the door. She looked at Naruto again, half hoping his stories about being shunned were exaggerated, that maybe this place had always been waiting for him. But he simply shrugged and dropped onto the couch, already unzipping his jacket. The fabric slid aside, revealing a simple black undershirt beneath. He looked completely at ease, as though this were the most natural thing in the world. Karin's face heated instantly. She turned away too quickly. Wait," she said, forcing her voice to steady. "If you're taking the couch, where am I supposed to sleep?" Naruto answered without even glancing up. "The bed." She spun back around. "I can't do that. This is your home. I can't just take over like that." He rose to his feet, a teasing glint in his eyes. "I don't really see the problem." Before she could protest again, he stepped closer. "What are you?" In one smooth motion, he lifted her, careful and gentle. Karin froze in sheer shock, heat flooding her face. "And Naruto," she gasped. He didn't tease her, didn't laugh. He simply carried her down the short hallway and pushed open the bedroom door. Inside waited a large bed, neatly made, untouched by any sign of regular use. Naruto set her down carefully, as if she might break. Karin blinked at the room. It was spotless, almost too perfect. "You don't use this?" she asked. He scratched the back of his head. "Not really. This place still feels too big, too new. I'm more used to cramped rooms and bad furniture." He gave a small, awkward smile. "I guess I never felt like I belonged here yet." Karin sat on the edge of the bed. It was soft, warm, safe. "This is actually really comfortable," she admitted. Naruto chuckled quietly. "You get the bed. End of discussion." She studied him for a moment. "Thank you." He looked away. Weeks later, Karin had stopped counting how many days had passed since she'd arrived in Konoha. Not because they blurred together, but because, for the first time in years, they felt real. She and Naruto went everywhere. Ichiraku, quiet streets at dusk. Rooftops where the wind carried the sounds of the village far below. Sometimes people stared. Sometimes they whispered. And more than once, Karin caught the knowing glances. Looks that assumed something deeper was already forming between them. She told herself it was ridiculous. Too soon. too fragile. And yet, Naruto was nothing like she had expected. He was kind in ways that didn't demand repayment. Stronger than he ever boasted. Smarter than he pretended. And stubborn to the point of absurdity. Especially about the couch. For days, Karin had argued with him. "You're sleeping like that again? I'm fine. You're going to ruin your back." Still fine. Eventually she realized he wasn't doing it to be polite. He was doing it because once he decided something was right, nothing in the world could move him. Infuriating, but strangely comforting. At night, alone in the bedroom, Karin often stared at the ceiling long after the lights were out. The bed was warm, too safe. Her body wasn't used to rest that didn't come with exhaustion or fear. Sometimes memories clawed their way back into her dreams. Dark laboratories, hollow promises, the bridge, the pain. But every time something cut through the nightmare. Naruto's chakra, steady, gentle, like a quiet presence standing between her and everything that had once broken her. The dreams faded, replaced by something softer, something she didn't yet have the courage to name. One night, Karin sat upright in bed, breath unsteady. A nightmare had nearly dragged her under again. She pressed a hand to her chest, grounding herself. The apartment was silent, except for the soft sound of breathing from the living room. She slipped out of bed. The light from the hallway revealed Naruto asleep on the couch, arms folded awkwardly, hair a mess, expression peaceful in a way that felt almost unreal for someone who carried so much. She stood there for a long moment, watching. "You really mean it, don't you?" Protection, not possession, not expectation, just presence. Karin whispered so quietly that even she barely heard it. "Idiot." But there was no anger in the word. Only something warm, something dangerous. Because warmth was something she had once believed she didn't deserve. And now it was everywhere. Somewhere else. Far from Konoha. Far from the safety of clean rooms and quiet nights. Sasuke Uchiha walked a path stained by choices that could not be undone. And in the depths of Naruto Uzumaki's soul, beneath seals and ancient power, something watched. Not with hatred, not with rage, with awareness. The girl under his protection was no longer just a rescued enemy. She was becoming something else. Something that would force the future to choose. Between bloodlines, between destinies, between destruction and rebirth. The weeks beside Naruto changed Karin in ways she hadn't expected. Not slowly, not subtly, but undeniably. For the first time in her life, peace didn't feel like a lie. She found herself thinking about him when he wasn't around. His stubborn kindness, his ridiculous optimism, the way he stood between her and anyone who looked at her like she was something dangerous instead of someone wounded. And somewhere along the way, without ceremony or permission, her heart began to lean toward him. She had started to build connections too. A few of the Konoha shinobi, people who should have despised her past, had offered her something close to friendship. Little by little, she was being folded into Naruto's world. Two people, however, stood at the center of that world. Haruno Sakura and Hyuga Hinata. Hinata had been surprising. Karin noticed it almost immediately, the way Hinata's chakra shifted whenever Naruto entered a room. It wasn't aggressive or desperate. It was gentle, warm, devoted in a way that didn't ask for anything back. Love, pure and unmistakable. Karin had seen enough obsession in her life to know the difference. And from what she gathered, Hinata had already confessed her feelings once. Naruto hadn't rejected her, but he hadn't embraced it either. He simply hadn't known what to do with it. Karin didn't understand how someone could be so blind to something so obvious. But Naruto had always been that way, seeing the world through hope rather than subtext. Sakura, on the other hand, Sakura was a storm. Their first real encounter after the bridge had not gone well. Sakura had demanded answers. Why Naruto was protecting her. What Karin's real intentions were. What she had done for Sasuke. Karin, already raw from betrayal and fear, had snapped back. Two stubborn wills collided. Voices rose. Tempers flared. And when words failed, chakra spoke. Sakura's fist had shattered the training ground in a single downward strike. Naruto had retreated to a tree, watching with wide eyes as the earth erupted beneath her. But Karin hadn't backed down. She had mirrored the motion. Her own punch cracked the ground in half, sending stone and dirt into the sky like a violent wave. Naruto had been launched from his perch, barely avoiding the hail of falling debris. What stuck with him most wasn't the destruction. It was the look on Karin's face. Not rage, not cruelty, but something darker, controlled, focused. A smile that said she would not be broken again. He had nightmares about it for days. Karin, however, remembered it with a faint, private satisfaction. The hospital. Now, she sat quietly in one of Konoha's medical wings. Not as a prisoner, not as a suspect, but as a trainee. Processing into the hospital core had been strange. Nurses whispered. Mednine watched her with thinly veiled curiosity. Some with suspicion, some with intrigue. Karin didn't care. She sat with her back straight, glasses low on her nose, completely absorbed in the pages of a well-worn book. A few heads turned. Some coughed awkwardly. The title alone was enough to draw attention. Karin remained unbothered. Her mind wasn't on the room. It was on him, Naruto, her guardian, her roommate, the person who had rewritten the definition of safety for her. He was exhausting sometimes, too loud, too emotional, too honest for his own good. But she couldn't deny what being around him did to her. He made the world feel less sharp. Her gaze softened. And then she remembered Mount Myoboku. You're beautiful because of your red hair. The words had been simple, careless, but they had lodged deep in her chest. She had spent years hating that same red hair. Years believing it marked her as different, unwanted, something to be used rather than cherished. Now, without thinking, her fingers slid through it. She adjusted her glasses and smiled. Elsewhere, Hokage Tower. Naruto was not having a peaceful day. The air inside Tsunade's office was tense, thick with argument. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable, Naruto insisted, hands planted on the desk. She's cooperating. She's helping in the hospital. She hasn't broken a single rule. Tsunade leaned back in her chair, eyes sharp. She was affiliated with Orochimaru and Akatsuki, she replied. Do you have any idea how that looks to the council? She's not with them anymore. Naruto shot back. She nearly died because of them. That doesn't erase what she knows, Tsunade said calmly, or what she's capable of. Naruto's jaw tightened. She deserves a chance. Tsunade studied him, not as a Hokage, but as a woman who had seen too many soldiers break beneath the weight of the world. You're asking me to give special privileges to a former enemy, she said. I'm asking you to trust me, Naruto replied. I'll take responsibility for her, everything she does, everything that happens. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Tsunade exhaled. You're becoming dangerous, Naruto. His eyes didn't waver. Then let me be dangerous for something that matters. The Hokage closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them. We'll see. Back at the hospital, Karin turned a page, unaware that the man who had changed her life was standing his ground in the most powerful office in the village, arguing for her freedom, her future, her right to exist without chains. unaware that, with every word he spoke in her defense, the world was slowly repositioning her not as a former enemy, but as something far more dangerous, someone worth protecting. And in the quiet spaces beneath the village, where ancient powers listened for shifts in fate, something began to move. Because when the hero of Konoha chose someone to stand beside him, the future was forced to choose as well. "Bachan," Naruto said again, voice tight, "if I'm really going to learn how to control the Nine Tails, don't you think having someone like Karin with me makes sense? She's a sensor. If something goes wrong, she'll feel it before anyone else even notices." Tsunade exhaled sharply. "I understand why you want that," she replied. "But you're asking me to let a former prisoner, your personal responsibility or not, walk freely outside the village. I cannot do that." "But—" "No," Tsunade cut him off. "The moment you aren't beside her, she becomes a liability. I won't gamble the safety of this village on faith alone." Naruto's fists clenched. "The only option I see is confinement," Tsunade continued. "House arrest at best. A cell at worst." "No," Naruto growled. "I promised her. I promised I wouldn't let her be locked away again." Tsunade's gaze sharpened. "And you think I haven't considered that? You think this is easy for me?" She rubbed her temples. "You're asking me to overlook her entire history. I already know her past." Naruto shot back. "She told me everything. Then you know why I can't just let her follow you into dangerous territory." Tsunade leaned forward. "She could be a plant. A long-term asset Orochimaru threw away at the right moment." "She's not," Naruto said immediately. Silence followed. Tsunade studied him. "Naruto," she said carefully, "are you falling for her?" His face went scarlet. What? Don't be ridiculous. Bachan," he stammered. She's just my friend." Tsunade gave a knowing smile. "Of course she is." Then her expression hardened again. "Feelings aside, I cannot let her leave the village. She isn't registered under any nation. She has no allegiance, no formal rank, no legal standing." Naruto opened his mouth, and the words spilled out before he could stop them. "Then make her one of ours." The room froze. "Say that again," Tsunade said softly. "And make her a shinobi of this village?" Naruto repeated, more carefully now. "She's an exceptional medic, and she's one of the best sensors I've ever seen. She can read chakra patterns so precisely that she can tell when someone's lying. Those aren't just talents, they're strategic assets." Tsunade's eyes narrowed. "You're asking me to rewrite a criminal record because you believe in her." "I'm asking you to give her a chance," Naruto said. "The same kind of chance people never gave me." Tsunade smirked faintly. "He's close." "You still haven't convinced me," she said. "Power doesn't equal loyalty." Naruto took a step forward. "Then put her under supervision. Assign her to a provisional team. Genin aiming for promotion. Hell, put me with them if you want. Let me be responsible for every move she makes." "Naruto," Tsunade said. "She isn't even a genin." He slammed his knuckles onto the desk. "Then let her become one." The room shook slightly from the impact. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" Naruto straightened. And then he did something he had almost never done. "Tsunade-sama." The title hung in the air. The Hokage's eyes widened slightly. Naruto kept going, voice steady now. "I will probably never call you that again. But I am now, because I need you to understand how serious this is." His hands trembled, not from fear, but from conviction. "I am asking you to trust me, not as your student, not as your surrogate grandson." He met her gaze directly. "As a shinobi who will bear the consequences of this choice." Tsunade stared at him for a long moment. Behind the desk sat the Hokage. But behind her eyes was a woman who had seen too many people broken by systems that refused to bend. "You would stake your name on her?" she asked quietly. "Yes." "Your future?" "Yes." "And if she betrays that trust?" Naruto didn't hesitate. "Then I will be the one who answers for it." The room fell into heavy silence. Tsunade leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "You've grown reckless," she murmured. Naruto shook his head. "No. I've learned what it means to protect someone." Her lips curved slightly. "That may be the most dangerous thing a shinobi can learn." She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, the decision was already forming. "Very well." Naruto's breath caught. "I will consider a provisional arrangement," Tsunade said. "Strict supervision. Limited clearance. And if she gives me one reason to doubt her." "She won't," Naruto said immediately. Tsunade's eyes sharpened. "Then she will be detained, and you will answer for it." Naruto bowed deeply. "Thank you." Tsunade watched him carefully. "You've just tied her fate to your own, Naruto." He straightened, expression resolute. "I know." Elsewhere, Karin turned a page in her book at the hospital, unaware that the man she trusted more than anyone was reshaping her future with every word he spoke. Unaware that her life was no longer balanced on the edge of a cell, but on the shoulders of the hero of Konoha. And deep within Naruto's seal, something ancient stirred. Not in anger, not in hunger, but in approval. Because when a Jinchuriki chose to protect rather than destroy, the world was forced to decide whether that choice would lead to salvation or to war. Tsunade folded her arms. "I'm listening, Naruto," she said. Naruto drew in a breath. "I'm not the same idiot I used to be," he said quietly. "At least, not completely. I know what's coming. Don't look so shocked. I spoke with the great Toad Sage. You know what that means." Tsunade's expression tightened. "He sees the future," Naruto continued. "And he didn't speak in riddles this time. There's going to be war. Not just skirmishes, real battlefields. Akatsuki, the nations, everything." His eyes hardened. "If I can control the Nine Tails, we can end it before it becomes a massacre. With that power under control, there won't be any pointless deaths." Tsunade exhaled slowly. "You're still a genin," she said. "Even if you have power, no one will listen to you. Rank matters in war." "Then let me change that." She looked up sharply. "Send me to the Chunin exams in Sunagakure," Naruto said without hesitation. "Me and Karin. Let her enter the shinobi system. I'll vouch for her. I'll take responsibility for everything she does." Tsunade studied him carefully. "Why her?" Naruto hesitated just for a moment. "I don't know how to explain it," he admitted. "But the great Toad Sage, he didn't tell her to leave. When someone doesn't belong in a prophecy, he sends them away. He didn't do that with Karin." His voice lowered. "There's something about her. I think she's connected to what's coming. Not in a small way. In a way that can change how everything ends." Tsunade's brow furrowed. "You're saying she's part of the crossroads? The bloodlines he spoke of?" "I'm not saying she's the future of one clan or another," Naruto replied. "I'm saying she matters. And if I don't protect her now, the prophecy moves forward without us having any say in how it turns out." Tsunade leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing in thought. "So this is your first move," she murmured. "Not just to train, but to interfere." Naruto nodded. "She's strong," he said. "She just doesn't know it yet. I saw what she can do when she sparred with Sakura. That wasn't luck. That was buried power. She just needs the right push." Silence stretched between them. Then Tsunade sighed and raised both hands. All right, she said. You've made your case. Naruto froze. Really? She smirked. Don't sound so shocked. I was enjoying the argument. Naruto groaned and rubbed the back of his head. You had me terrified there. Tsunade stood, her expression turning serious once more. You and Karin will be provisionally registered for the upcoming Chunin exams in Sunagakure. Strict supervision. One misstep, and the deal is over. Naruto's eyes lit up. Thank you, Bachan. She waved him off. Now get out of my office. I have paperwork older than you waiting for me. You got it. Naruto turned and rushed for the door, barely containing the grin threatening to split his face. Elsewhere, Konoha Hospital. Karin closed her book and stared out the window. The village was quiet. Too quiet. She didn't know why, but a strange feeling sat in her chest, like something had just shifted, far beyond her sight. She adjusted her glasses. What are you doing now, Naruto? Deep within the seal, red eyes opened, not in fury, not in hunger, but with ancient awareness. The first move had been made, a Jinchuriki choosing to interfere with fate, a red-haired girl being placed onto the board. The prophecy was no longer a distant vision. It was unfolding, and soon, when bloodlines collided and the world demanded a choice, only one path would survive, and Naruto Uzumaki had just declared that he would decide which one. Karin stared at him. The word echoed in her mind as though it had struck something fragile. Genin, of Konoha. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. What? Naruto blinked at her expression, then broke into a grin so bright it seemed to bend the afternoon light around them. I talked to Tsunade, he said, rubbing the back of his head like this was the most natural thing in the world. A lot. I told her what you can do, your sensing, your medical skills, everything. I told her I'd take responsibility. And she agreed. Karin didn't move, didn't breathe. The street around them felt suddenly distant. Voices fading, footsteps blurring into noise. All she could hear was the steady rhythm of her own heart. You, her voice came out thin. You did that for me? Naruto shrugged, almost shyly. Yeah, of course I did. For a moment the world tilted. Karin had spent her life being used, for knowledge, for labor, for loyalty that was never returned. Every place she had ever stood in had come with conditions, with chains, whether visible or not. This was something else. She took a step back without realizing it. You realize what you're saying, right? She asked. This isn't just paperwork, Naruto. This means I belong to a village, that I'll be watched, judged, that if I make one mistake. I know, Naruto said softly. He didn't joke, didn't interrupt, just met her eyes. And I still did it. Something in her chest cracked open. She looked away, swallowing hard. You're insane. He smiled. Probably. Silence stretched between them. Then, why? Karin asked again. Not suspicious, not accusing, just honest. Naruto's gaze drifted to the street, to the people passing by who barely spared them a second glance. Because you deserve a place where you're more than what you can give, he said. Because you shouldn't have to keep looking over your shoulder. And because I don't want you thinking you're alone anymore. Her throat tightened. Before she could answer, a voice cut through the moment. Naruto. They both turned. Sakura stood a few meters away, arms crossed, expression caught somewhere between concern and irritation. Her eyes flicked to Karin, then back to him. You were supposed to come find me after you left the tower, Sakura said. You didn't tell me you were dragging her into official village business now. Naruto winced. I was going to. So it's true. Sakura said, stepping closer. You're making her a shinobi? Karin bristled instinctively. Naruto didn't step back. Yes, he said. She's in. Sakura studied Karin carefully, not with hostility this time, but with something sharper. Something that weighed risk and consequence. You know what this means, Sakura said at last. You won't be protected by just his word anymore. You'll be judged by what you do, by who you stand with. Karin met her gaze. I already have been, she said quietly. My whole life. Sakura's eyes flickered. Then she exhaled. Then don't make him regret this, she said. Naruto opened his mouth to protest. But Karin spoke first. I won't. Not bravado. Not defiance. Promise. Sakura nodded once, then turned away. Tsunade wants to see you both later. There are conditions. Naruto grimaced. Of course there are. When Sakura left, the noise of the street returned. Karin finally let out the breath she'd been holding. Genin, she whispered. Naruto watched her carefully. You don't have to say yes. I mean it. If this feels like too much. She shook her head. No, she said. It's just, no one has ever fought for me like that before. Her fingers tightened at her sides. You just changed my entire life, she added quietly. Naruto's smile softened. Good. For a heartbeat, they simply stood there, the world moving around them. Then something else brushed across Karin's senses. A ripple. Faint. Distant. Chakra she didn't recognize, cold, sharp, and wrong. Her eyes narrowed slightly as instinct flared. Naruto, she murmured. He turned. Yeah. We're being watched. The air seemed to thicken. Somewhere beyond the hospital walls, beyond the streets of Konoha, a presence slipped between shadows, patient, calculating. The first step of the prophecy had been taken, and something ancient had noticed.
That's all for now. If you enjoy them, please like, share, and do comment.